Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is a special meeting of the Board of Education. Adequate notice has been provided. The schedule and said notice of meetings has been posted April 2nd, 2025, and are maintained in the interior window of the exterior door of the school administrative offices, mailed to the retrospect, courier post, and filed with the clerk of the Borough of Oaklyn. All right, let's call to order. Roll call.
Mr. DeMarco.
Here.
Mrs. Love.
Here.
Mrs. Marmion. Here. Mrs. Rotondo.
Here.
Mr. Schaefer.
Here.
Mr. Stotts.
Here.
Mr. Tavy.
Here. I'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Can we have a motion to move into Committee of the Whole?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All on a vote?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. All right, and we'll turn over to Dr. McDowell for our presentation tonight.
So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here at this special board meeting to talk about the new tax levy incentive program with the Department of Education. And so, as always, we always want to make sure that we are grounded in our vision, in our mission. And that is to make sure that we are creating an environment that inspires and empowers every one of our students, and that they're prepared for what comes in the future. And so, tonight's agenda is to give a brief presentation on the challenge that we are facing and how this new program can help us navigate through some really challenging circumstances that districts like Oaklyn and districts throughout the state of New Jersey are facing. Review of timeline and next steps. We're in Committee of the Whole so that the board has an opportunity for the free-flowing of questions and discussion. And then wrapping up any additional questions or feedback. All of the information presented this evening will be shared publicly tomorrow. It'll be in the inboxes as well as posted on the school district website. And so before we dig into the program, we want to start with some positive news and some key highlights. And so there have been some very challenging years academically across our country, across our state. Despite those challenges, in Oaklyn, we continue to show growth and proficiency in reading with continued increases. We have hit our growth targets in literacy and mathematics for the last 3 years in Oaklyn, and that is because of the tremendous effort of our teachers, the hard work of our students, and the partnership with our parents. And this is something that we just want to continue to celebrate. We also want to talk and celebrate when positive trends are taking place. Because of the robust nature of our student support program here in Oaklyn, we are seeing a pretty significant decline in chronic absenteeism. Chronic absenteeism is defined as being absent for 10% or more of the days during the school year. And so what does this continued decline mean? It means that our students are spending more days in school, which gives them a greater opportunity to be successful and demonstrate that positive growth that we referenced in the first slide. And so understanding the current landscape, I don't think we need to spend a lot of time, but 2025 is not the year that we anticipated. The chaos and uncertainty in public education that has been dominating much of our news feeds and many of our thoughts and sometimes nightmares, with the escalation of the mental health crisis that's taking place and manifesting in our schools, growing teacher shortages both at the state and national level, the rising costs of goods and services, local budget crisis and cost of living increases to our citizens. The potential elimination of the United States Department of Education, as well as the elimination of other federal programs, departments, and services, and then pending reductions to federal K-12 funding. As of last week, the United States Department of Education issued a mandate to states first and school districts second to eliminate certain items within their state curriculum, within their state constitutions, or face the withdrawal of federal funds. They have extended that to the end of this month. The New Jersey Department of Education is taking the lead on this discussion, but ultimately what this potentially could mean is that if the federal government is able to begin withdrawing federal funds, those dollars would need to be made up either at the state or at the local level. And so we are all working collaboratively with our state and county officials in order to advocate for the funding that our students need and to make sure that we're not continually increasing tax burden on our citizens. And so what has been done in order to address the budget challenges that we are facing? And so we're not going to read everything, but there have been a multitude of collective efforts coming from community members, from board members. And so several months ago and throughout the year, we asked our community to write letters to local and state representatives in order to prioritize funding for students. Technical reports have been written. Advocacy groups have been formed in Camden County specifically. We had board members on this board participate in public hearings with the state of New Jersey. And the governor and the state's response is this new tax levy incentive program as a result of the tremendous advocacy from a lot of different folks advocating for additional resources for students in our districts. And so what is the tax levy incentive program? It's a one-time exception to the 2% tax cap law. It's an opportunity for school districts to raise their local tax levy and permanently reduce any potential budget deficits or funding shortfalls. It's an incentive for one-time use where the New Jersey Department of Education will provide additional funding for the 25-26 school year only, worth 5% of whatever the increase that local communities approve through this particular exception. Why is Oaklyn eligible for this program? The state has determined that Oaklyn Public School is underfunded locally and has a budget that is below educational adequacy. And so what does educational adequacy mean? This is a complex calculation that determines the minimum cost needed to provide a thorough and efficient education to all students within your community. And so what is the financial impact? And so that's what we'll talk about this evening, the impact both in the community and to our school. And so we've identified three funding scenarios or opportunities. And so the way that the program works is that you apply for the program. The state will then determine how much you qualify for based on their calculations. And then that approval comes back to the board, and then the board, based on feedback from the community, based on goals and objectives of the school and the board, they will determine what amount to be able to implement or not. And so to give our community a sense of what's at stake with this opportunity, scenario number one is with the full funding that has been calculated. It would be an average monthly cost to the average homeowner of about $49 per month, with an additional one-time infusion of state aid of $37,500. What this would allow the district to do would be to bring back the staff who were laid off last year. It would allow the district to restore funding for curriculum materials and supplies. It would provide budgetary stability for up-and-coming, out-of-district tuition, as well as transportation costs. It would also allow the district to restore funding to update technology. And so we are a one-to-one computing district, and the technology continues to increase, and our young people are pretty hard on their Chromebooks, and so we need to replace our Chromebooks every year. It would also allow the district to restore the STEAM program, in addition to replenishing our maintenance reserves. We are very fortunate that our board has made really wise investments in terms of making sure that our facility was updated and there was no deferred maintenance. However, in school buildings that are a little long in the tooth, maintenance is always lurking in the background, and we want to make sure that there is no disruption of services to students, and that we continue to maintain a safe environment. Option number 2, and so what we're showing is the different potential options, so you have a sense of the range of what may be approved in the near future. So option number 2 is what we're calling a mid-level increase. This is about $550,000. Average monthly cost is about $38 per homeowner, with a one-time additional infusion of state aid of $27,500. And so the list is the same, but what comes off the list is we would no longer have the funding in order to update the technology. We would not be able to restore the STEAM program, and we would not be able to replenish our maintenance reserves. We would be able to bring back the staff who were previously laid off, those positions, restore funding for much-needed curriculum materials and supplies, and provide a degree of budget stability for out-of-district tuition and transportation costs. And so to kind of share what does that mean, last year our board worked really meticulously in order to reduce the tax burden because we were moving into a very challenging budget year. And so we were able to make really wise and moderate reductions to the tune of about $106,000. At the 2 weeks before the budget needed to be sent to the state, we had several families move into Oaklyn. Oaklyn is a desirable place to live. We had several families move in, and 2 out-of-district placements cost $99,000. Those are part of our responsibility to educate every student. And so any cost savings that we were able to generate was completely absorbed in a 2-week period. And so when we talk about having stability, what we don't want is we don't want to be in an environment where we're having to reduce things in the middle of the school year because we have a financial responsibility to take care of our students. And so that's what we mean when we say budgetary stability, so that the budget we start with at the beginning of the year is the budget that we end with at the end of the year. And then the last option would be minimal funding increase. Minimal funding increase would allow us to bring back the 2 academic support positions that were cut last year due to the reduction in state aid. That would be at a $300,000 increase with an average monthly cost to homeowners of about $24.92, with a one-time infusion of about $15,000 in additional state aid for the 25-26 school year. And so what are next steps? And so this evening, the board will be discussing and voting on a resolution to simply apply for the program. They're not voting on the budget. The application will be submitted to the state of New Jersey on Monday, April 14th, for their review. And so the application is pretty intensive. It requires a line item justification for any level of estimated increase. They will review and they will come back and they will let the Board of Education know what they have been approved for. And then the board will do further deliberation to determine what next steps would be. Prior to the end of April, all of these things will be taking place. We will have a regular board meeting on April 29th, and we will have on May 6th our official public hearing where the board will approve the final budget, which will or will not include revenues from this tax levy incentive aid program. That concludes the presentation. Do any board members have questions, concerns, statements that they'd like to make at this time?
I have some concerns. To be quite honest, I'm disappointed with all 3 options. I think when it says staff that we've cut, I think it's important to make clear that these are two positions that we did not have prior to COVID and that they were through grant money. So now we've decided that we're going to actually put them on the budget. And the reason, I'm not saying it's a bad thing to have additional staff. My concern is we're below adequate, so why are we focusing on expanding when we should be focusing on retaining, preserving, and keeping things so we're able to function in years ahead? I don't understand why we're going to add 2 additional staff members that were through grant funding temporarily when we should be focusing on an appropriate solution that isn't half of what we're asking to increase.
And so the academic support positions, and so what we're talking about, and so I'm going to use a visual reference because I think that it's really important. And so when we think about continued growth and proficiency, our teachers are working incredibly hard, but I believe that anyone who has stepped foot in a classroom in the last 5 years would agree that the conditions in which our educators are operating is dramatically different. And that was further exacerbated during COVID, but it didn't start with COVID. And so the needs of our students are very different. And so what we see on this particular slide is that we have maximized our potential and we are showing moderate increases in academic achievement. And so yes, 57% proficiency shows improvement, but the goal is 100%. And so what you are not seeing in this particular slide is math. We have made a focus for the last 5 years of targeted levels of math support, and we are seeing growth in math, but it's not enough. We need additional support in order to make sure that students are getting what they need and that our staff have the time and the capacity and bandwidth to be able to deliver the additional support. And currently, we have reached the maximum of our bandwidth to provide meaningful support. Those 2 positions that were reduced were providing targeted levels of Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction to students who struggle. And when we think about our performance in math, we're talking about 3 out of every 10 children are proficient, which means 7 out of every 10 children in our district need additional help. And so the board has been acutely aware, based on feedback that has come directly from the faculty and staff at our school, that additional help is needed.
I understand that, but my concern is we're below adequate, so I don't think we're in a comfortable position to put on 2 staff members. I mean, from my experience, and I understand it's a different district, but when I was in the high school, there were positions that were being funded through grant money, and the issue is that these grants are supposed to be temporary. They expire, and I'm just surprised that none of these options specifically focus on needed instructional supplies, on new curriculum, on maintenance, that all of these options include these 2 staff members. So option C is solely those 2 staff members that we never had before we got that grant, but we don't have an option where it just covers supplies and maintenance. I mean, like, for example, most of the stuff that's in the school has been here since I attended from kindergarten to 7th in this school. So I just think it's surprising that we don't have an option that solely focuses on that.
And so I understand the argument. And so I'm going to say something that is a declarative statement, not meant to diminish or discount things. We can run schools without books, without computers, without desks and chairs. The most powerful tool in a school are teachers. And so if an individual is asking me if I had $1 to spend, I'm going to spend it on a powerful teacher over a thing. We can go out and we can find resources for things. Finding high-quality teachers that can help grow our kids, that's very difficult to find. And I would strongly invite other board members who were integral in the recommendations that are coming from our school to weigh in also.
I'd like to weigh in, and sorry, Jen, but just from a perspective of a parent who has had a child who entered the school on Zoom in preschool in 2020. And she's my third child to go through the school. I didn't want to talk about this publicly, but I feel like it needs to be said if statements like I've heard are being made. She has made progress every year, and this year she stalled. And the only thing that has changed is not having 2 MTSS, which we talked about publicly last year. 2 teachers was 50% less services across the school. That's the math of it. And now she's in 3rd grade, and now she's going to take the NJSLAs, and I'm afraid that if we don't take action with getting our teachers back to do this important work that we've seen have results, then next year, this board will be squawking about why the test scores are so bad. So I think this is our opportunity to take action to do what the mission of this board is.
If I can jump in as well, I hear everything everybody's saying. When I look at the options, my knee-jerk reaction is I want to go as little as possible with an increase, and I know that might not be popular when our budget's like as squeaky small as it is, but we have a fiscal responsibility to the community to not continue to raise taxes at a rate that people on fixed incomes or whatever situation's there. So I look at this and my first thing is, all right, smaller is better. And that's without weighing all the bullets, but that's the initial reaction. But then when Therese makes her point, the human capital is just so much. I shouldn't say this, I'm not an educator, I don't know the value of this Chromebook, but if we had to get by next year with less of these or some broken ones, I think to have the educators back is where it's at. Like, I think that's the bang for the buck. But what happens next year when we're faced with another cut? Are they going to go? Are they the first things to go? So that's my actually bigger concern about bringing them back, is because if they're the most expendable, if we're back at this table next year having a conversation, turnover is expensive. Training people, recruiting people, doing all the things associated with that, only to not be able to balance a budget next year. Are these people we bring in, are we going to potentially be talking about letting them go again? So that's where I'm a little bit stuck, but those are my thoughts on it. I do agree that the value of a teacher, having seen our teachers in action and what we don't have the, I guess teachers don't always have the easiest kids, but like to get through that day with that support, to be able to pull children aside and help them where they're struggling, I agree with Therese and the value in that, and I think it's more important than the whiteboard or whatever other groovy thing we can get with some technology or the curriculum. I just worry that as soon as we recruit them, a budget thingy or whatever, we'll be faced with that next year. And then are they going to have to go? So is that right? Are we positioning them for success? That's my concern.
Just to clarify, some of the information we've been given is a little bit misleading to some degree. This is a one-time increase. That means that we can increase our budget by whatever the percentage is this year. But it doesn't go away next year. That increase is forever. So you're concerned about the teachers. If you bought the increase, is probably not there next year. I am concerned. If we hired more teachers, more support staff, I don't think there's any question, but the kids would do better. The problem is we're a public education entity. We have to educate everybody. And, there are limits to that. If you want individual attention, you go to a private school. And even Catholic schools aren't doing that anymore. So there are limitations to the number of people that you can throw at this.
So let me provide just a little bit of clarity. We're not talking necessarily about one-on-one instruction. We're not talking about private school education. What we're talking about is how do we make sure that that child that has an IEP gets extra in their small group. That child that's an English language learner that needs a little bit more time in terms of English support gets what they need. There's not enough time in the day in order to answer 100% of the needs, but what the staffing allows us to do is to answer more of the needs so that more children get what they need in order to be successful. And so when we talk about what we're trying to mitigate, last year we saw a $632,000 cut in state aid. Option 3 helps us to at least cut that negative impact in half permanently. And so we're trying to, the state has given us an opportunity to right what was inflicted upon us last year and at least cut it in half at a bare minimum.
Yeah, not
When
exactly.
we look at the options as they were pointed out, like let's say hypothetically we go with option 1, that's $600 a year that would be imposed to the taxpayers. Wouldn't be just for this year, it would be every year, correct? And then whatever other municipal or whatever other reason that we increase taxes, like the 2% might get thrown in there as well. And I feel like we, as a board, have to be mindful of how often and how frequently and to what degree and to what extent we're increasing taxes for the town.
Yeah, so a couple things. One, I obviously might be a little biased here, but I'll invest in a teacher any day of the week over a Chromebook and twice on a Monday. What the teacher can offer is irreplaceable when you have quality staff in there. I've had the privilege of working with some incredible ICS teachers in Collingswood, seeing the difference it makes working with students with 504s and IEPs. So sometimes the problem is, yes, these positions have been salaried through grant money, which in itself is an issue, but the value of what that position brings and the quality staff member is irreplaceable, and no Chromebook or anything else can replace that. To Jen's point, I do feel it's a balance, right, with so many things. I want to stabilize our base, as, for the district, but we do need to be mindful at what costs figuratively and literally for the taxpayer. When it's nice to break it down by month, but we're looking at either, roughly 600, 460, or 300 annually. And that's a lot of money. Not everyone has two incomes coming in. Some people are on fixed incomes, and it's something to be mindful of, which I know we are as a board. And like so many things, it's that balancing act. I want to stabilize our base for the future, but at the same time being very mindful of the burden it places on our taxpayer. And any investment we make, again, I think our number one investment is in staff. So just points to consider as we navigate through this.
I just wanted to clarify what I said. My intention wasn't to say that Chromebooks are more valuable than teachers. What I was trying to say is my biggest concern is that we put the teachers on there, but our focus is on retaining teachers that we currently have. And my biggest fear is that we go ahead and add these 2 teachers, but we're going to have to decide who we're keeping 2 years from now. That's my biggest concern. And the reason I mentioned the curriculum, the supplies, and other things is because those purchases we aren't having to make every single year. That can be that can be saved for something else. But when we have 2 teachers, we have to pay them every single year, and that we're already on a tight budget. That's why I don't understand if we add these 2 more teachers, we're already struggling. That's why I don't understand.
And just clarification too, Fred. Fred, your comment about the state now gives us the opportunity to repair what they tore apart last year. That's not quite right. The state cut us that money last year from the state appropriation that we were supposed to get and didn't. Now they're allowing us to fix it by taxing these people. So it's not exactly like the state's giving it back to us. They're not giving it back to us. They're giving us an opportunity to get it back in another manner, so that they don't have to fund the formula. That's their formula. They work this through, and we're supposed to get this much money. But they say, well, you don't spend enough, so you're not going to get that much money.
You will never have me defend the state funding formula.
Good. Good, we're on the same side.
Just a couple points. Bringing it back to the funding formula, just for members of the public who are out there. This actually goes all the way back to 2009, when the state mandated that districts are only able to raise our taxes by 2%. What that does is locks us in regardless of how much our costs go up. Dr. McDowell mentioned the cost of out-of-district tuition and transportation. The state didn't cap those. So if we have a student who would be placed out of district for special education services that we aren't able to provide. Those out-of-district schools, the transportation, they can raise that as much as they want every year. So this gap that we're talking about, this adequacy gap, has grown exponentially each year since 2009. So this is an opportunity for us to kind of take ownership of it as a community, close that gap, and to what degree we'll decide, fully, partially, minimally, to keep our school moving on the right track. In regards to the teaching positions, and there's more conversations we'll have as a board once we really talk about finalizing the budget and where things would go. There's two programs that we would see here at our school. And we have a lot of acronyms in education. We love that. It's hard for us to keep track of, but the two acronyms that we're talking about is ICS and ICR. ICS is in-class support. So that would be support teachers for students like Ms. Marmion's daughter, who is just receiving that boost, that little extra support to keep her growing in reading or math or whatever the case is. That's in-class support. The other academic support teachers we're talking about is in-class resource. That is designed specifically to include students with IEPs in a general education setting. The state, for that type of programming, provides limits. So I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it's 6 or 8 IEP students in an inclusion setting? Yeah. So even more so, yeah. Right. So the state, what the state does is the state put caps on these programs for the number of students that can be included. Rightfully so, right? Otherwise, it would just not be manageable for one teacher to work with that many students. But then what happens is, as the state does, they say, well, this is really what we want, but you can apply for a waiver to increase those numbers. And so that's one of the tough decisions that we're facing, too, with these academic support positions. Will we be able to run a thorough and efficient program for our special education students by having that additional ICR, in-class resource teacher, or not? When we talk about students who would go out of district, as they say, you're easily talking anywhere from $80,000 to $140,000 per student. So when we talk about the MTSS teachers, the ICR teachers, the ICS teachers, any of those acronyms you want to throw out there, they play an important role in that they help us to keep students here with us, right, with their grade level peers, and really allow us to maximize our funding that way. So those are just some points on my mind about the current programming. The one thing I do want to talk about as well is Oaklyn as a community. I've been on the board now since, when did we start? 2017. And every step along the way, Oaklyn as a community has stepped up for our school. This goes back even prior to that, when the send-receive relationship with Inella changed, and we lost considerable funding that couldn't be replaced by state support, by tax levy support. We pulled through. We altered our send-receive relationship with Collingswood to help offset those funding shortfalls, and this is outside of this 2% gap. We had a referendum just prior to the pandemic, and I was talking to a colleague earlier today who said, I don't know if any districts ever pass a referendum on the first time, and I quickly said Oaklyn did, right? So once again, the community came out to support the school to the fullest. So, once we do get to the public comment section, I'd encourage you to share your thoughts on those tiers that we're talking about, right? And where you would like to see our district moving in the years to come. In terms of those two positions, Mrs. Coleman and I talked a little bit earlier today. We're certain as certain as you can be unless there's some kind of dramatic change at the state where those two positions would be sustainable with this change. So I don't know, unless something drastic happens at the state level where things really just go off the rails, or federal funding as well, which we don't know. But these positions should be sustainable, because that, I agree, is incredibly important. We don't want to hire people, train people, and then lay them off. It's not productive. For us as a district, it's not cost efficient, and it's not helpful for the teachers here too, because they build relationships, they rely on those supports, the students rely on those supports. So we don't want to have that kind of be on a yo-yo. So yeah, that's all I have to say on it. Board members? Any other thoughts?
There's one more thing. I just want to make sure that we're being clear. And so when we talk about the board's responsibility is to apply for the program, these scenarios are not decisions. These scenarios are encapsulating what could you purchase with that dollar amount. And so the board does not lose the ability. And so, for example, I'm just going to throw out a number. If the state comes back and says that the board has a capacity to increase by 600, and the board decides to do 350, the board would then do 350 and then determine how they would like for that funding to be distributed based on what's available. And so this is just kind of giving an example of if these funds were made available, what you would be able to purchase with those funds.
Okay, so these are flexible?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just along those lines, Fred, if we did not spend everything that we were given the opportunity or the ability to spend, and the state gives us this 5% on that anticipated amount, but we don't spend it, they're going to reduce our state aid next year by that amount, I would assume?
So the way that the program works is that, and so for example, if you increase by $100, the actual levy wouldn't be $100. It would be 100 minus the 5%. And so they're giving you the 5%. And so the total amount that would actually be coming in, and so the actual levy would not be the $100. It would be $95, and then the state would pony up the 5. And as long as you're staying below your adequacy budget, it's fine. And so it's a one-time infusion, and so even if it's, $500,000, it wouldn't, the actual levy wouldn't be $500,000. The levy would be the $475,000, and then the state would be ponying up for that first year, and so the actual increase would be $475. It wouldn't actually be $500.
The numbers that you had given us earlier, the monthly charges, do they anticipate the state's portion?
Yes.
Okay. How about this as a wild idea? If the state really wanted to help us, why wouldn't they just take off the 2% cap?
Great question,
I know the
Bill.
answer to that.
It's an election year, and there is a lack of political will to do right. And so the reality is that we've been advocating at the state level for several years. And so when talking with the state agencies and the Department of Education, the legislature, they don't have the appetite in order to make a change of that nature in an election year. And so next year, after the campaigns are over and individuals have been installed, it is something that they believe will be on the agenda for further discussion.
Yeah, appetite's a good word. That's not the one I would have used, but
That's fair.
And I encourage everyone to join the New Jersey Fair Funding Collective, NJFFC, that has a ton of information and is a collective of our regions, school districts, volunteers, community members, to try to advocate for things like you just talked about.
The other point too, and I'm showing my age a little bit, but back when I was still teaching in the classroom, there was prior to the 2% caps, you would have your budget election every November. And so for us as a board, most of us might not have been faced with this type of decision. However, going back to the period of time before the cap, this was an annual conversation for boards. What do we need? what can we live with, what can we live without, and then what's the impact going to be for the community. So, that 2% cap kind of took this whole conversation out of the game, but, so I commend everybody on the board for really looking deeply and weighing those questions for a lot of us for the first time as board members.
Can I say one clarifying thing, too, on my prior statement? My daughter is currently taught by someone who's been Teacher of the Year and is beyond phenomenal. I gave the example because I just want to say again how astounded I am by the faculty and staff at our school, and just say again how my position is because I really wanted to give you some real-life information, but they're doing their job ×2. So hats off to them.
And the other piece too, just coming back to Dr. McDowell's point, tonight the approval is to just apply. And we're applying for the whole thing because we're not going to leave money on the table. The state will decide how much of that we're even eligible for, and then we'll decide where to go from there. So we do have the flexibility to change these plans. However, all of it's done through collaboration with district administration, teachers, to find out really what the needs are throughout these hallways every day, right? So while we do have those options there as starting points, I don't want everyone to think that, all right, the board is just going to make this call on our own. There's a great deal of collaboration with the teachers, with the administration that goes on, ongoing, but particularly with what we're facing now, to make sure that we are really doing what is best for the kids.
So to piggyback off of what Rich just said, and so when we received notice, and so the state is never forgiving when it comes to giving you time to make decisions. They're always rush. And so they gave us, what, Beth Ann, two weeks to do this? They gave us 2 weeks to have community meetings, to fill out a 50,000-page application, to go back to our schools. And so what we did, because in both Oaklyn and Collingswood, we are both eligible. And so we reached out to all of our schools, and we asked for our schools to give us a detailed list of priorities if additional funds were available. And here in Oaklyn, they gave us different tiers, and they gave us the justification for why those components were important. And so we believe that school-based staff are best positioned to make a majority of the decisions because they are boots on the ground. And so it would be my recommendation when we're deliberating that we utilize that priorities list established by our staff here to be the foundation of our discussions.
Any other comments or questions from the board? All right. Can we have a motion to adjourn the committee of the whole?
So
Can just ask one more question?
Yeah.
I figure I'm a couple questions short, but...
You have to say your quota, then. I was a little disappointed for a second there, Bill.
I wouldn't want to disappoint anybody. The numbers that we were given for the $49 per month for option 1, does that include, or is that in addition to the budget that we've already submitted to the state?
Includes.
It includes it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's it.
All right. Motion to close the committee of the whole.
So move.
Second.
All right. And we are closed for the committee of the whole. We're going to move on to our first public comment section of the evening. To all participants here, please remember to stand, state your name and address. Keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. The purpose for this public comment section is to discuss items listed on the agenda, which there's only one, so I think we know what we want to talk about. More general comments will be made later on in the meeting for items that are not on the agenda during our second public comment section. Public is reminded that that attempts to resolve all concerns and complaints should first go through the appropriate staff members and administrators. So any public comment, just make sure when you come up to the mic, be loud and proud because those folks on YouTube want to be able to hear us.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Mulger. I live at 145 Kendall Boulevard. I'm a parent of 3 children in the district. One about to start preschool in September, one who is POR at ICS in 5th grade. I have one daughter in Collingswood Middle School who's a 6th grader, who is POR in ICS. You don't know, you now know I work at the middle school. As it's public knowledge, I make $38,100 for a 12-month position. I'm a family of 5 who loves this community so much, I wanted to work in one of the buildings. I wanted to build a bridge for Oaklyn to Collingswood because my sister-in-law and my husband went through the district, and they were here until, I guess, before 7th grade, 9th grade, whatever the transition was. I want to urge the board to think of your community members that are in here who also work other places. Some of us are penny pinching. I don't want to leave my job. I don't want to move. But any increase can cause that, and I'm not the only one. My kids also receive phenomenal services. What you said, Therese, that teacher was the one that pushed my 5th grader to get the services, and she's on grade level. So I understand. I urge you not. Just look at the budget. Be creative. Have you communicated with the borough? How does this affect? I'm sorry. I wasn't going to do this. How does this affect residents? Like those that are on tax gaps, those that, for every person in an apartment building or a rental or a tax gap or a business, how does that affect me? Is my $49, if you go all the way up, is that more a year because you don't have as much to pull from? I don't know budgets. I don't understand it. I'm just trying to understand because my kids go here. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Connor Reardon. I live at 320 Bryant Avenue around the corner. I'll keep it very short, but I'd just like to reference Dr. McDowell. You stated that this is a very attractive place to move to and to live in, and this school is the bedrock of that. And I'd like to voice my full-throated support of this application and getting as much as we can. And I'd just like to voice my dissatisfaction with how much the state is contributing as part of this. It should be much, much more. The fact that, you know, we're looking at hundreds of thousands of our taxpayers' dollars up there, and just $38,000 from the state is mind-boggling to me. But that's all I've got to say, and I'd reiterate my support for the application and the tax increases, whatever may come.
Jackie Walters. I live at 407 Oaklawn Avenue. I just want to first say to the board, I appreciate your due diligence, and I can see it in your faces that it's not an easy job, and I agree with that. So being in public education, though, I will also say that you cannot diminish the power of a human being. That's the place to put money, and that's a good decision. But mindfully, if you're talking about test scores, you need kids exposed to technology, because unfortunately, the barrier as the state is on technology. So it is a hard decision because we need our kids exposed to it. So to say that our kids are using broken computers, they're not going to be successful in the test no matter how many people you put in the classroom if they can't type. So they're difficult decisions for everybody to make. But one of the things that we all need to know is that you're permanently raising the tax levy. It's not one time. So that's a big ask. So you were elected officials. We believe in you. We elected you. But it's not a one-time ask. You're asking us forever. And that is a heavy weight to carry. So I encourage you as board members, have we looked at everything? The person who spoke before us mentioned creativity. Have we looked at how we can raise revenue? Are we maximizing the people in our buildings to do multiple jobs? Small districts, I work in one, many people do multiple jobs. So are we outsourcing things that don't need to be outsourced? Are we paying for services that we don't need to pay for that we can do in-house? Are we raising rents to people? Are we looking to build programs that we can charge tuition for? So you want an in-class support? Is that one of the teachers we want? Or we want a resource room? Are we building programs that maybe you have space, and it's been a long time since I've been in the building, my children are 30 and 27, but can you build a program that you're charging tuition for special ed students to come here? So there's other ways instead of asking us for money, which I get it, but are we looking at every stone before we ask the taxpayers for more? Because we've got a lot, like we all hear the news, and I'm not trying to be political, we've got tariffs coming, you've got potential losing your PEA money coming, we got the loss of federal money. Are we going to be able to sustain this? Those are questions. I think you got to look at how do we build revenue. It's just another avenue to go to. But again, thank you for your time. We appreciate your support, and I do think that Oakland's a great place to live.
Any other comments? All right, we will end our first public comment section of the evening. Moving on to item 4, Finance, Buildings, and Grounds Committee. And we are looking to approve item 4.02, which is the approval of, or sorry, was that 4.01? 4.01, yeah. Item 4.01, which is the application to the state for our funding increase. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions from the board? All right, hearing none, on a roll call.
Mr. DeMarco.
Yes.
Mrs. Love.
Yes.
Mrs. Marmion.
Yes.
Mrs. Rotundo.
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer.
Yes.
Mr. Stotts.
Yes.
Mr. Tavy.
Yes. All right, motion passes. Moving on to our second public comment section of the evening. This public comment section is for any topics that might be on your mind. Remember to please stand, state your name and address, keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. The public is reminded that attempts to resolve all concerns, complaints should first go through the appropriate staff members and administrators. Any additional public comment? All right, hearing, oh, no? Okay, hearing none. Hearing none, we will close our second public comment section. And with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
There we go. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye. All in favor, aye. All right, meeting is adjourned.